So we got another new theme song, and this is thanks to One Man Symphony. So if this is going to start some kind of like competition to see who can make the coolest theme song for Ninja News Japan, I'm open to it because, again, this is an area I have zero talent. Please keep sending them in. You can send them in directly to me, velocipodcast@gmail.com. You could send them to Twitter or something else. I don't know. There's lots of ways to get in touch. All that information's at the end. And then there's also the voicelink.fm thing. You can click the link in the show description. I'm going to try to not do transitions. Some people have told me they don't like the transitions, the da-dun-dun. Again, I've explained before, it's because I don't necessarily record this all at once. So transitioning from one story to the next story sometimes seems abrupt if there's no transition. So this week, no transitions, just to see how it feels for me after I listen to the episode. I bet I go back to the transitions of some sort. Maybe I'll get a softer one or something. But the problem is, because I don't record this all in one go and it's not scripted, the segue between one transition to another is essentially non-existent. And that was my workaround. I'm just going to see how it feels to have nothing, just like go bump from one story to the next story. The secondary problem is it's then very hard for me to move, let's say, a later segment to the front if I actually do a segue. So I have less ability to like take two stories that match or are similar and put them together. These are my problems, not yours. Please enjoy the episode, and thank you to One Man Symphony for this week's theme song. I actually have about 3 or 4, so I might actually be trying out a couple over the next few weeks. So this is a sad note to start, and it's not sad as it'll make you feel sad. It's more sad, look at how pathetic I am, because for a little bit of time, in order to try to increase the profile of the podcast, maybe get more people to listen, get more people on board, I was actually considering a Twitter like hot girl of the week, because I knew basically guys would go for that, and then they would start listening to the podcast. And one thing I've learned about habits is if you get people to do things a few times, like I think the number they actually said is 12. If you can get someone to do something 12 times in a row, then it starts to become a habit. So your goal, if you want to change a habit in your life, is just try to do it 10 times. And then your body and your mind will start to go, well, that's just what we do now. So for about, I was thinking 6 months, I was going to do like Hot Girl of the Week and connect it to a link to the podcast and then trick befuddled men into clicking the link and then maybe listening to a podcast and gaining listeners that way. Because apparently I'm a sad attention whore. But that's also really fundamental marketing. But I've decided against it. Not because there isn't plenty of material available on the internet, because Twitter is just rife with hot girls. And it would of course, to stick with the Japanese theme of the podcast, it would have been primarily like Japanese cosplayers and stuff. But I decided against it because apparently I have principles, which I didn't know until this. I thought, whatever, if it gets people to listen and grows the podcast, that's fine. Which I thought, but apparently not. Fish, on the other hand, don't have any problem with this. We have talked about fish banging, I think it was a couple weeks ago, about how tuna were like getting it on and restocking themselves. And then Japan was like, well, can we eat all that extra that's come back? It's not extra yet because they're still trying to get back to minimum numbers. Using germ stem cells. So we've heard about stem cells. These are germ stem cells. I honestly can't tell you the difference. The article I read did explain it, but it got a little too in-depth for my Bachelor of Arts brain. So I kind of just moved on. I know they're using stem cells, and they're using that to create baby fish. So scientists managed to spawn 1,700 fish, making both the sperm and the egg from just one male. So again, no idea how they do that. The way it was written, though, said both the sperm and the egg from just one male. So I'm assuming they actually meant all the sperm from a male and the egg from a single female. I actually have to, because again, I don't know enough about this, I can't judge the accuracy of the article. And I'm actually assuming the person who wrote the article I read put more time into it than I did, because yeah, the level of research you get, if it's not about shenanigans, I'm probably not researching it as much as you think I should. Right now they're using like these tiny fish to do it. And what they want to do is actually aim it towards bluefin tuna. So the tuna that we had with that agency 2 weeks ago, then they can create basically a couple thousand fish per every fish they can get their hands on. And then Japan can just overfish as much as they want. Because that is actually the ultimate goal, is to have so many fish available that overfishing is no longer a thing. Probably they wouldn't be out in the wild as much as just sort of a fish farm, which that is to me where fishing and sort of growing our food should be. If you want to eat something, I think you should grow it, even if it's meat. So if you want to eat beef, you should have cows in a farm. If you want to eat fish, you should have a fish farm. This is getting a step towards that. To create the germ stem cells, they need to catch adult fish. Now, it turns out from one female, you can get 2,500 eggs, and one male can have 12 billion sperm. I don't know if I'm supposed to feel inadequate by that, but just to be safe, I made sure I felt a little, eviscerated. There has been a 90% success rate in fertilization and a 70% success rate in spawning. So of the 2,500, 70% will end up being actual fish that will move on to the next stage in life, which is to be eaten. Which is, again, not kind of the whole point. So don't feel bad for those fish. It's actually to save the ocean in a way. So I'm really on board with this. Japan, in an attempt to curb coronavirus, is proposing staggered holidays. This isn't a new thing. If you listened to Ninja News Japan last year, you actually heard me talk about staggered holidays, not necessarily for disease control, but for congestion. Again, not your nose, but actual like traffic congestion. One of the big problems is everyone in Japan gets the exact same set of holidays, which means any holiday destination is just jack full of people. And the roads are inundated and you can't get anywhere and everything's super expensive for the holiday period. And so I was actually saying it would be better if people took holidays at different times, because then there would be tourism all year round. The price would kind of even out. It might be more expensive in a general rate, like on the off season, but generally the price wouldn't be jacked up 10 times during 1 week of the year when everyone gets a holiday. The government actually suggested this as well. But now they have another motivation. It's saying like, look, crowds are a problem. Things like coronavirus are still an issue. We don't want everyone out at the same place at the same time. So staggered holidays. So it actually would now solve two problems instead of one. It would mean less congestion on the road, less traffic, and lower prices, and lower the risk of getting coronavirus. Travel is down by tourists 99.9%. So they had numbers on how many people actually came to Japan. Of course, it was incredibly small because no one was allowed to travel. You weren't allowed to get into Japan. So that's actually the first problem. So they are saying domestic travel is the key to recovery. So we need people in Japan to do in-Japan tourism, to spend their Japanese yen in Japan so that they can actually get the economy rolling again. They're also come up with an interesting thing where, well, interesting in that it's like a horrible idea and I would never want to do it. They're talking about workations. Now, there's a word you never want to hear. And the idea is that you are an office worker and teleworking has become a very normal thing. So everyone in the education sector is using Zoom. A lot of companies are using like Google Meet and well, basically now every big company has some kind of online software meeting service. So the idea is that you as a worker now go to a vacation locale, do your day's work from that vacation, but then as you get off work, you're now, I guess at the beach, in the mountains, wherever you prefer to be. I would never go to a beach because I'm the whitest man who ever lived and I would burn within seconds. So I would probably be up in a mountain somewhere. As soon as I say that, I immediately go, well, probably with poor internet connection, because that's the reason I go there. Anyways, let's say you go to a resort. The resort's going to have like good internet. You go there, you work. Now, the idea is that you get off work at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and you're not going home. You're actually in a resort. So you can go have a nice dinner. You can have a nice evening. You get up and you spend a couple of days in the vacation. So it's actually not the worst idea. It's just the idea of linking work to a vacation place kind of takes away from the vacation place. But if you actually want to look at it positively, you can see the appeal of when I finish my day's work, I'm now in this new interesting place with lots of stuff I could do. So these are suggestions from the Japanese government to Japan in general. Of course, they can't impose this on people. So there's no one has any idea if this is actually going to happen or be successful. But the staggered holidays, If I had any say in it, I would absolutely push it because I think that would help everybody across the board. And I think people would just have better holidays with not every single place being packed to the gills. And that might actually relate to our earlier fish story, packed to the gills. An ex-justice minister in Japan was recently arrested for vote buying. And just like the toilet banging story from the previous week, where the wife of the guy who was cheating on her by having sex with people in toilets, she went online and apologized. Again, I was talking about the apology culture, like even like the victim in many cases kind of has to apologize. The big one was a couple of years ago where a girl was attacked, one of these idols was attacked, and she apologized to the audience for the trouble she had caused because it's very stressful for everyone who's paying attention to the story. And for a Western person, this is ridiculous. And honestly, in that case, it was just out of bounds. But Japan's apology culture is very strong. So Abe, Prime Minister Abe, actually had to go on TV and he had to apologize to the nation for hiring this guy. Now, he didn't know, we're going to assume, he didn't know the guy was like going to buy votes when he hired him. Maybe he knew he was that type of person. Maybe not. I mean, in the West, I think they would just condemn the action, move on, and say, it's not my responsibility. I'm no longer connected to that person now that I found out they did a bad thing. In Japan, the prime minister actually apologized for approving him in the first place. So he's like, I shouldn't have hired someone with such like lax morals. So I apologize to you, the country. I was trying to find out how much a single vote costs. Now you assume, because you want a volume, that actually per capita each vote couldn't cost that much. The pair, it's actually a man and his wife, the ex-justice minister, and she was a politician too. They were both doing this, so it was kind of like a team effort. In total, it seems they spent 30 million yen. That's about $280,000 American. And they gave that 30 million yen to 100 people. So this is part of the vote buying scam. Now the thing is, they're spending 300,000 yen per person they are giving money to. But of course, they're not just trying to get 100 votes. They were giving those packages of money to other politicians. And I think what they were trying to do was get their support so that those politicians would either support them in their votes, and if this is an election year, turn their constituency towards these people who are trying to buy the votes in the first place. So I didn't actually get a good number. It costs 300,000 yen to basically buy a politician, maybe a politician's vote. And then you don't know how long to the future does that go. Is that every single time you have to give them 300,000 yen? Is it I give you a lump sum of 300,000 yen now and that counts for like 3 votes or 10 votes? Like who knows? The deal not being clear, which is sort of the point of nefarious dealing, meant it was really difficult because that was the bit I suddenly became interested in. When we were talking about cocaine and stuff, I actually wanted to find out how much do you spend on cocaine in Japan versus other countries because it's like extra illegal here. And it turned out it was like 10, 15, 20 times more. Honestly, it seems like a small sum, but I think it was basically an initial payment that was supposed to go into the future. Whether they planned on continue paying them or if this was just like a, hey, be my friend money, that's left to be seen. If there are more details come out on that, I will follow up on that. I will do research on that because I really do want to know how much does it cost to buy a single person's vote. Uniqlo is making washable masks. Now, Uniqlo is a big company in Japan. It's actually moved into other countries, so you've probably heard of it. They make bland clothes, but they're purposely that way, so they're actually very functional, flexible. They can match into other outfits really well. A lot of people I know wear almost exclusively all Uniqlo clothes all the time because, again, you'd have a white t-shirt and jeans, you have pants and a black shirt. It all matches. It's really simple that way. That's made it incredibly popular. And with minimal branding means that it's actually very chic. Like, again, having no labels or tags on it actually makes it very clear that, this is a mysterious, cool thing. That's actually giving them a lot of credit because really this having no marks on it means it's just sort of functional. Anyways, that's not the point at all. They decided they're going to put out washable masks, masks being a big thing right now. Again, masks were not unusual to be worn in Japan anyways, especially during allergy season now with COVID-19. You got a lot of people who wear masks all the time just to be safe. My office is still implementing an all mask all the time policy, which I approve of. My daughter made masks, which were great when it was cooler, but now The problem is it's getting warmer. The masks you made were quite thick and heavy. I'm actually finding it's sometimes hard to breathe. I need to get some lighter masks. So I was actually going, oh, these might be good. These are using the breathable fabric, Airism, which they actually have made a set of underwear out of. So the whole point is that primarily women's underwear, they're actually quite tight. And if it's cotton and stuff, it doesn't breathe as well. You get a sweaty butt crack. I think we all suffer from that in different ways. The Airism one, it breathes more. You'll get less sweaty around your butt crack area. So they're using the same fabric as in the underwear and making the masks out of it. And they make them washable, which is really nice because it means you can use them again and again and again. The problem is, of course, that means everyone wants them. And they crashed the website on the first day and people were lining up, which is, of course, the first problem because COVID-19, social distancing, lines in Japan, those things don't align very well. 3 masks cost 990 yen. And there are 3 styles altogether. Overall, this seems like a pretty good deal. You're not getting ripped off. Uniqlo doesn't rip you off. They have fairly solid quality clothing at a reasonable price. So the masks, again, this was kind of the expectation. They aren't going to be ripping you off. It's not going to be like $1 million per mask. Masks are available again, so you can't get them in stores and stuff. But having a reusable one that you could buy one set and then use that for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks is very appealing because you don't want to spend huge amounts of money on masks. Sort of relating to the last 2 stories, telecommuting has become a fairly common thing. And it's new to Japan. This is not something that was common in Japan. Japan had very much the idea you have to come into the office every day, show your face, be a good employee. 70% of the people who have telecommuted in Japan want to keep telecommuting. 68.2% said the reason was no commuting meant no stress or lower stress. So there was no stress from commuting. 50.6% said that if they could telecommute, they could live somewhere further away and then they could find a cheaper place to live. So I live really far away from any big city because I wanted to buy a house to house my family. If I lived close to the city, I would either have to get an apartment or a much smaller house. So I do this. I travel an hour and almost 20 minutes on the train every single day. And every time I say that, people are shocked. But the whole point was to save huge amounts of money and have a full-size house at the end of the day. And in 10 more years, I'll probably have it paid off. And if I have it paid off, I now have my own house that I can just sort of sit in and, shout at people to stay off my driveway and stuff. I don't have a lawn, so it's going to have to be my driveway. 47.7% said they were able to care for their family, and 42.4% said they could do less overtime. Because if you're at home, you don't have to wait for the boss to leave for you to leave. That's actually a really Japanese thing. Is you can't leave before the boss. The boss gets up, says, "Good night, everybody," walks out, then everyone else is allowed to get up and leave, which means if the boss works late, you work late, even if you have no work to do. If you're at home, if the boss is still at work, it does not matter. So that's taken that off the table. Now you'll notice that the percentages didn't add up to 100, and that is because multiple answers were allowed. So don't worry about that. That was 60% liked this, and then a percentage of that 60% also liked something else. Telecommuting has become a very popular thing in Japan, and people seem to want to keep doing it. Since we're on technology and the government and work and things, the government has made a contact tracing app. It uses Bluetooth. And like every other country where the government's coming out with a contact tracing app, people are very worried about privacy. So the information, though, of course, the first thing they said was it does not collect personal data at all. I mean, we have no idea if that's true or not, but that's what every government's going to say in this situation. If you are within 1 meter or less for 15 minutes or more, you and that other person sort of register as contact. And then for 14 days, that record stays in the app. If someone who meets that criteria tests positive for coronavirus and registers in that app, you will be notified. So you will know you have been in contact with someone who has ended up with coronavirus, and you should go get yourself checked out. You'll notice that last sentence, though, someone tests positive and has registered in the app, is very difficult because for an app like this to be effective, 75% of the population needs to have the app. So doctors, scientists, the people creating the technology, they're all saying if we don't get 75% of the population, this is essentially useless. And with the privacy concerns and the lack of trust in the government, because this is being run by the government, the goal of 75% saturation rate is very, very unlikely. Since we're on COVID news, and it's much lighter now, so I'm actually weirdly more likely to talk about it, because for a while it was all COVID news and it was getting a little depressing. But it's starting to feel a little brighter. I know yesterday they had 20 some cases in Tokyo. They're measuring Tokyo because that's where the cases are still happening. It went down and then went up to 40s, and then it went down again. So they're sort of hit this like lull, and they're trying to just get that below into the bottoms and then hopefully zero again, just like New Zealand seems to have been able to do. They have found that different blood types may affect how hard COVID hits you. So type A blood type people are more likely to catch COVID-19. So maybe they have less resistance to the virus. People with type O are less likely. China's found the same results. Many scientists are saying like this is still very shaky science. We don't have enough to actually prove that it's true. But so far, multiple countries have come to the same sort of, not necessary conclusion, but they're seeing this as evidence as being a very possible thing, that blood type does have an impact onto whether or not you are susceptible to the COVID-19. That's interesting. You can't change your blood type, though. I guess if you had type A and you knew that, you could be more careful. That would be fair. But at the end of the day, you can't change your blood type, so it doesn't really mean anything. What it does mean, though, is that the insane Japanese belief that blood type affects personality and stuff is kind of reinforced. So Japan has essentially their horoscope system is not based on your star sign or your birthday. It's based on your blood type. So you'll actually see morning shows and they'll give their prediction. If you have type B, you're going to have a great day. And then you meet two people and they tell their blood types and they actually decide immediately whether they're compatible or not without actually getting to know each other. And then, like, if you watch anime and stuff, they do often give the blood type of the character if they give some sort of stats, because for Japanese people, that actually tells you what kind of person they are. So A is very serious and strict and follows the rules, and B is, the opposite of A, and then AB is a split personality. It's all very much like that. So they give you that information. You actually can draw character conclusions right away. Now, my concern, that gives them more reason to believe that that's true. So blood type does have an effect. It is important, which it is, just not in the way they're saying. So I mentioned Shenanigans at the beginning, and this is exactly what I was talking about. This is one story, and so there was a lady who's 40, and she had sex with a middle school kid who was 14. The first detail was that they did it at 7:30 in the morning. So he went over to her house and they knocked one out at 7:30 a.m. And I guess you'd have to be 14 to have that much energy at 7:30 in the morning. Let's just put it that way. She was arrested for violating the prefectural ordinance regarding the healthy upbringing of youths. So there's a law for you. It's prefectural, so it probably means it's different prefecture to prefecture. But overall, there's the healthy upbringing of youths ordinance. Some version of that in every prefecture. And basically, it's, don't diddle kids, which is, pretty good one to have on the books. She said, I thought the boy was cute. I liked his face and personality. There were no romantic feelings. That's a harsh little jab at the end there. Like, yeah, he was cute. He was a plaything. I didn't actually feel anything for him, though. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. Like, I was just using him. Is that better than I actually liked him? Because I actually liked him and he's a little kid. That's pretty gross. But I actually just used him as a toy and he's a little kid. Yeah, no, okay, let's just put it this way. They're both bad. I can't actually decide which is worse because they're both bad. She's a bad lady. One of the things, this is in multiple articles because it's very salacious news. So I got the 4 versions of this story. Turns out the woman's house was a regular hangout for multiple boys. And yes, I bet it was. Because again, there were clearly shenanigans ongoing. 14-year-old boys like nothing better than a little shenanigans. There are a lot of other questions that surround this that I haven't gotten an answer to. Is like, how do you find out your boy is hanging out at this 40-year-old lady's house? When you find out that multiple boys are hanging out at this 40-year-old lady's house, is that not weird to you? She had her own kids, but none of her kids were of the age of the boy she was diddling with. So she has been arrested. It's going to be interesting because this is sort of the double standard of men messing with a kid and a woman messing with a kid, do they get treated the same way? I actually think in Japan, this is one of the fairer aspects, because I bet she gets treated exactly like the men. Now, the thing is, men, they don't get particularly harsh punishments for doing these awful things. And I'm being really honest. That just does not happen. So while I'm clearly not shying away from the dirty, dirty news, I'm not just going to be repeating the same stuff over and over again. So if it's just like a guy took a picture up a girl's skirt, unless there's some interesting aspect, I won't be revisiting those stories again and again. If you're interested in those kind of stories, you actually probably should go back to the earlier episodes and actually start from the beginning, because you'll get all those episodes and all that kind of information. At this point, I don't want to talk about the same story over and over and over. So I'm just trying to find ones with interesting aspects. And the abuser being an older woman and the kids hanging out at her house, that was all weird to me. And the parents of those kids know, I guess, did they know? Because, yeah, I guess you don't know where your kids are hanging out all the time. But someone sooner or later would have found out. Like, oh, you're hanging over at Mrs. Yamaguchi's house? Well, why? Would be a fair question for a parent to have. So stay safe. Don't hang out at older ladies' houses if they're going to attempt shenanigans on you. If you're going to do the shenanigans with the older lady, again, make sure everyone's washed their hands first. Stay safe.
Leave a text or voice question or comment at voicelink.fm/velocipodcast. Click the link in the show description. You can tweet questions or comments at Ninja News Japan or join the Facebook group. On Facebook, search for Ninja News Japan. Sexy out, homies.
Using if you've listened to news, an ex-justice minister in Japan just lost all my sentences.